Commission. Would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Brown?
Here.
Dr. Estrom?
Here.
Mrs. Houston?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Mr. Rue?
Here. Go ahead and turn the meeting over to Brian.
Yes, thank you, Commission. Tonight we have one work session item. If you recall, we had an agenda item about 2 months ago with Springfield Promise Neighborhood where we were providing some funding. And at that meeting, it was asked that maybe Kaylee Lawrence, their director, could come and give a little bit of update to the Commission in regards to Springfield Promise Neighborhood and some of the great activities that they're doing in our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kaylee.
Thank you. I have a lot of information on the slides, probably not everything that we'll get to tonight, but I gave each of you a copy so you can take it with you. Ms. Pierce has a copy as well, so anybody that'd like to see it afterwards, I'd be more than happy to, share it with you. So I always like to start with our vision and our mission, and we've revamped this a little bit over the past year or so. Very simple. Our vision is to support children thriving in communities with supportive families, excellent schools, and flourishing neighborhoods. So right away, that gives you a little bit of insight into our project and our program. We work with children, we work with families, we work with schools, and we are working with the community as well. So we're trying to layer opportunities, both for children and families in the context of their school life and their neighborhood life too. So as I mentioned, we have a commitment to working with the public school system. That's where the majority of kids go to school, and Springfield, Ohio is public schools. I feel very strongly that public education is necessary and in need of support. We believe that schools are anchors of the community. They are safe places. They are places for not just children, but their families and the community as well. We also believe in resident-led change, which means that we're trying to empower people who live in neighborhoods to take care of and support their own neighborhoods. I can't imagine or assume that I know what people want for their neighborhood, but I want them to tell us so that we can mobilize and provide some resources and give some support. And we also have a culture of aspiration, or a desire to build a culture of aspiration where we are aspiring to be smart and be kind and be citizens and be involved in our community and be supportive families and help our kids succeed. So I'm sorry, on your sheets there, the map is super small. I apologize that I didn't realize I was going to print that small, but I'd just like to highlight the schools that we work with. We've got 5 kind of in our direct view right now. We started with Lincoln Elementary about 10 years ago, actually more like 12 years ago. And the attendance zone of Lincoln Elementary was our first real focus in terms of really focusing and trying to support and invest in a neighborhood. That has since expanded to other schools, especially given the fact that once kids leave Lincoln, they're going to Hayward for middle school. We haven't quite reached the level of getting to the high school, but we also learned of a mobility study in 2016, where we learned that the majority of kids in Springfield, when they're moving from east to west, not necessarily north to south. So we started to think about a lateral approach as well, working with other elementary schools. So recently we've started to build relationships and work with Kenwood Elementary, as well as Schaefer Elementary. Kids are in this kind of south east quadrant of Springfield are either going to Hayward or Schaefer. And then we've also, from the beginning of our work as well, have worked with the Clark Center, which serves, of course, all preschoolers in Springfield going to all schools, but thinking that we can support the kids at Clark, specifically going to the elementaries that we serve as well. Most of our work is focused on that K-8 range, kindergarten or pre-K through 8th grade, trying to really focus on that good start to school, positive family engagement from the very beginning, thinking that will continue over time. I, of course, always need to share our supporters and funders and allies. There are many more organizations that we work with beyond the ones that are on this list and this slide, but these are, I would say, are maybe our primary funders, where most of our operational funding comes from. We have AmeriCorps Vista Positions, which is a federal level grant, all the way down to, local family foundations and even, the smallest of funders like Young Women's Mission, and, some other grassroots organizations as well. As I mentioned, when I talked to the commission, I guess last month or maybe about 6 weeks ago or so, I like to talk about our work in 3 areas. The first being the work that we do with youth directly. A lot of people think that what we do is programming, and yes, we do a lot of programming. But I like to say that our programming is, we're using programming as a way to advocate for investment and support for more opportunity. So we want to show that enrichment programming, social emotional learning, career and college readiness, and those kinds of things are worth investing in, are worthy of making a priority in our community, right? So, a lot of people see us doing, mentoring and camps and after school clubs and all of that and think that we're a program delivery organization. And yes, we do that, but we're doing it because we want to advocate for more of that support here in Springfield for our kids. So you can see I just mentioned some of the kind of basic focuses we have in terms of early literacy, helping kids learn how to read. Most of our kids are multiple years behind. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know, right? But, when we have 6th graders reading on a 2nd grade level, that's a huge concern, right? And if they don't build those skills and if they don't have additional educational time and opportunity, they are never going to close that gap. So we work directly with schools, with principals and staff to enhance and extend the programming and instruction that they do in the classroom, translating that to after school, weekend, summer opportunities as well. We also feel really strongly that kids need positive adults. So we're trying to mobilize people in the community, residents, parents, grandparents, even, other youth and older siblings and that kind of thing to work with our kids as well, to be that positive, supportive person that they can lean on, they can go to, has a positive aspect that says, yeah, I want to be that teacher, I want to be that lawyer, I want to be that, we'll fill in the blank. Couple cute photos. Photos are helpful. The photo on the left is from a summer camp we did last year. The photo on the right was with a 4th grade classroom where we were learning about the garden and the life cycle of plants. The second big area of work that we take on is family engagement. We know that kids are not successful in school unless they have the influence and support of their parents for that school success, right? So we're both trying to mobilize parents and families to participate in the life of their child's school and also equip them with the support and resources that they need to, take that next career step or buy that home or, and repair their credit, make healthier choices, learn how to eat better, all of the above. And a lot of what we do is based on what families tell us. So, if we're talking to a group of parents and they say, hey, we're really facing some struggles with credit recovery and getting to the point where we have enough capital to buy a home, then we work with Neighborhood Housing Partnership and Habitat for Humanity to say, hey, you're experts in how to repair credit, how to get to the place of homeownership. Come talk to our parents and let's work together to bring some of those resources and education to our parents. You'll also notice that on the slides, I also include in a box, I'm sorry, it's kind of formatted weird on the PowerPoint, but our goal for how many people and what we're trying to do to serve. So serving 200 youth in extended programming to address educational and opportunity gaps. That's kind of our big organizational goal. And then serving 200 residents, caretakers, and partners in classes and events that provide tools that meet the needs of our youth. More photos of happy families, happy children. And then the third area of work is I like to refer to as community growth or community assets, developing funding streams that support and sustainable projects and initiatives, advocating for neighborhood investment, wise choices from our community leaders about, where we want our housing and where we want our community supports and resources to be and to go. How we use our land and how we increase green space for, play and recreation. And then, of course, providing an avenue for people to participate in community, whether that means, their church or their neighborhood association or their parent-teacher association at the school or, whatever that kind of third place might be where people tend to build community. Recently we've been focusing on a community garden that we own on Linden Avenue. It's actually the site of the original red brick Lincoln Elementary, which we're still finding red bricks for. But we're trying to make that a community space where we can provide some health education, a place where kids can play games and be active, be physically active. Kids and families can do things together, not just about nutrition and health education, but, have that be a community space for our neighborhood. So like I said, it's on Linden Avenue, 2 to 3 blocks east of Limestone and about 3 to 4 blocks north of Hayward. So right in the kind of the middle of Lincoln's attendance zone as well. It was a property that was originally owned by Habitat. When they did their merger with Greater Dayton, they approached us and said, would you like to take ownership of this property? That happened in 2020. We have a greenhouse. We have family growing space for families to tend to their own plots. And we also have many garden plots that we and our volunteers tend, that we harvest vegetables and produce to give away to the community. We don't charge people for our produce. We give it away. We actually hosted a garden camp there for the first time last year for about 18 students. And it was really awesome. They were super excited to learn. They think carrots are the little round things that come in the bag at the grocery store, right? So getting some education and learning about how our plants grow and how to fuel our bodies and be, make healthy choices and all of that is a priority for us. There's some photos of our garden. I wanted to share some results. So this was at the end of 2023. We have just finished a grant that provided some literacy supports to the schools. That was a 6-year grant. An average, so in 2023, at the end of 2023, with our data, 63% of the students that we served with our additional literacy supports made more than 1 year's growth in a year. That more than 1 year's growth is really important to close that gap, right? If a 6th grader is reading on a 3rd grade level, it's the word problem of one train is going 70 miles an hour, one train's going 60 miles an hour. They're never going to catch up unless there's some support to that second train, right? So that more than 1 year's growth is a really important marker for us to track student progress and student improvement. Over the course of those 6 years, an average just shy of 75% of them made more than 1 year's growth in a year. Now, can we actually attribute that to, the resources that we provide versus anything else? I mean, I like to say that, we absolutely were the factor that made the difference there, but I also think that it's the layering of multiple factors that make the difference too, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we also served, in just 2023, we served just over 500 students in pre-K through 8th grade in all kinds of educational and enrichment opportunities. A lot of this was in partnership with many community resources, some of which are sitting in this room, National Trails, Partners in Prevention, to provide, of course, literacy instruction and reading skills, helping them think about how to be of service and leaders in their community and be able to have choice and leadership and be empowered to say, hey, this is, something that's important to me and I want to work on it. Alcohol and drug prevention, healthy choices, and entrepreneurship as well. And this is obviously coming out of COVID as well. So, we can say that we saw 38% increase from 2022, but COVID was a huge factor in, our low numbers in the couple of years before that. So that's maybe a little skewed, but, we also provided 52 events and programs directly to parents and families last year. That thinking about it now, that actually equates to about one a week. Which it feels like that was about one a week. But some of them were things that we directly designed and led. Some of them were things that we worked with in partnership with partners, community agencies that said, hey, I have a really important, session or educational opportunity. Can we work together to set up an event where we can recruit parents and families that Promise may already be working with, or they may already be working with, to do some shared programming as well. And then we were able also to grow over 1,800 pounds of produce, like I said, that was given away free to community members. We do this both at a stand that we have on site at our garden, And we also, at almost every community event we attended, we brought a table and put out, as much harvest as we possibly had. At one point, we were harvesting like 50 pounds of tomatoes a week. If anybody ever wants tomatoes, call us up because we got them. We also were able to add some new raised beds, and I mentioned the garden camp. We also tried a produce subscription box for the first time. Families that may be facing some food insecurity, transportation challenges, housing challenges, where we actually packed up a box on a biweekly basis and brought it straight to them, direct harvest from our garden to those families. So this year we're going to try and expand our garden camp to serve more students. We're going to try and expand our subscription box to serve more parents. The subscription box was a pilot. It was the first time we tried anything like that. So we said, let's just start with 10 and see how it goes so we can figure out the logistics and the capacity of how all of that kind of thing works. But we're trying to find different ways that we can get that produce that we've grown into the hands of people. I wanted to include some things that we've learned. I want to be mindful of time too, so I'm going to fly through this. And I probably won't cover everything, but you've got it in your packet. We've learned a lot. This is going on 14 years of work. We started in the fall of 2010. So this is almost 15 years of evolution and progress. What we started with over time, I think we're still holding true to our original mission and purpose. Dr. Estrup was part of the planning team that was, the kind of the first envisioners and originators of the concept of a promised neighborhood here. But this requires a lot of understanding, a lot of innovation, some restructuring, some mistakes, some challenges, and it's hard work. We're trying to change the trajectory of a region, frankly. And I want to be clear that we're not doing this by ourselves either, right? Like I said, we probably have a list of like 70 organizations that we work with. We're not experts in everything. We're not experts in drug and alcohol prevention. We're not experts in financial literacy, but we know the people who are, and we want to bring those resources to the people that need them. We're doing a lot of grant writing, a lot of resource development, a lot of fundraising, and in large part because we want to pay people to do this work. Programs are great, but if you don't have a person to run the program, you don't have a program. So we've really tried to build our resource and organizational support to employ local Springfielders. Our entire team is Springfielders, people that were born and raised here. I can't say that even though I've been here for 16 years now. I can't say that I was born and raised here, but in Springfield, that means something when you can say that you're born and raised here and your grandparent, where your grandparents' house is or your great-grandparents' house is. So we've made an intentional decision to try and empower residents and community members to be leaders, to do this type of work, to do this organizational support of trying to pull resources together, trying to build events, opportunities, activities, programs. As I mentioned earlier, dosage, duration, and consistency are among our most important factors for the work that we do with kids. So, once a month ain't cutting it. Once a week probably ain't cutting it. But we've learned that we need to, make sure that the dosage, the duration, and the consistency of whatever we do with youth and families needs to be high, because that's where we see them. Of course, COVID had a huge impact on our students, their performance, their engagement, their attitudes, their behavior, their decision making. And I think that also, translated to the effect that it had on their families. I've said over the last year or two that, it takes almost 4 times as much work to get the same amount of people to show up to an event. And we're constantly, we're knocking on doors, we're passing flyers out at dismissal. We're trying to hit every single avenue we can when we talk to parents to say, do you know about this? Show up. We want to help. We want to work with you. We want to support you and your child. We also learned that parents are way more inclined to participate when their kids are involved, right? So we're trying to create opportunities for kids to show what they know, show what they learn, work with their teachers to say, hey, this is what we've been, learning in our classroom over the last month. Here's a poetry reading or an art contest or, a band performance or whatever. And then layering the fun and the educational together, right? So the kids have a reason to be excited to come, and they get their parents to come. Like I said, resident-led change requires leadership, which requires training, and training requires people who can actually teach. So we're really trying to educate people and support people. We've had about 75 AmeriCorps Vista members serve with us over the duration of our organization. We have anywhere between maybe 20 to 40 volunteers on a regular basis, and we're always trying to encourage people to get involved. Even if it's wrapping hot dogs at the cookout, it's something that's getting you involved and getting you out and talking to people, and trying to build relationships. We're facing a lot of complicated factors, and generational poverty is immensely difficult to overcome. And I'm not sure if we can ever actually eradicate generational poverty, right? It's deeply embedded in our culture, unfortunately. However, I do think that there are some things that we can do as a community to forward. One being meet people where they are, not where you think they should be. Working with people and not at them or to them or for them, but actually involve them in decision making and design. Thinking about the time, talent, and treasure that we all have to give. If you don't have money, maybe you have time. If you don't have time, maybe you have knowledge. So that type of community engagement in terms of volunteering and participation, I think is critical. And of course, advocating with our city leaders and our county leaders, and even our state and federal representatives to make wise choices, fund the programs and activities that show impact and deserve support. Housing, childcare, and education, I believe, are the three things that we need to always have at the forefront of our mind as community leaders, right? And we have to support our teachers. Our teachers are doing daily work with our kids every 180 days out of the year. They are showing up at 7 a.m. They are not leaving till 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 6 p.m. And they are pouring into your kids, whether you think they are or not. They are with you and your kids every single day. And our teachers deserve all of the respect and support that we can possibly give them. So, some of our kind of in the background work is, some teacher appreciation and support for the school staff as well. So I'll end with some upcoming dates. Of course, I wouldn't encourage you to volunteer if I didn't have ways for you to volunteer. So next week we're going to be at Kenwood. We're going to host a Lego night. Where kids and families are going to build a little dream home out of Legos, and then they're going to talk with Habitat for Humanity about some home ownership or resources for home ownership through Habitat. We're going to work with the Health District and Awakenings LLC to host a tobacco prevention workshop along that Healthy Choices line. Our garden is going to open the weekend of Earth Day. And we're going to host a sisterhood sleepover for our middle school mentoring groups to do some fellowship and fun things. If anybody wants to stay up all night with a bunch of middle schoolers, let me know. Sure that everybody's jumping to volunteer with us to do that. I told Tracy that I've gotten out of it for the 2 years because I haven't been in town the last 2 years, but this year I don't have that excuse, so I will be there. And then April 27th, we're going to host, be part of a group that hosts the Minority Health Fair at Hayward. I think this is the 6th, maybe 7th year that this event has been in place, where we're directly asking doctors and nurses and PAs and offices and providers and insurers and all kinds of health and community resources to come to one place so people can talk with a doctor, get a screening, get some blood work done. The mammography van is going to be there. I think even the OSU cancer screening van is going to be there. Typically, we see a few hundred people. It's not just for minorities, but we also know that minority populations have some higher health risks. And so we want to make sure that we can decrease any barriers to access to health. So that's going to happen the last Saturday in April. And, of course, this is just the next couple of months. We have things going on all the time. So we have a Facebook page if you just search for Springfield Promise Neighborhood. We have a website, springfieldpromise.com. We have some contact forms if you'd like to be added to our email subscriber list. We try to send out emails maybe once a week, not super frequently, but not trying to be super spammy about it, but sharing activities or events that we're hosting, as well as other community agencies might be hosting too. And then there's also a contact form for volunteering or potentially, working or serving with us as well. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so your contributions are tax deductible. And we're always looking for support. We're always looking for connection and engagement. So
Really,
that was a lot.
you are a powerhouse, and I am so grateful for your leadership. I mean, I'm serious. You put your heart into this, and I, in my mind, point to people like you who are changing the community and doing it with all heart and vision and wisdom. And I just super appreciate you. And I'm sure the commission does. I'm sure there's comments to make, but I just want to share my support
Thank
with
you.
you and share it openly how much I do appreciate everything you're doing, and you're continuing this vision that was handed to you and that you were part of the beginning too.
Yeah.
thank you.
So if you don't know, I'm not from Springfield. I came to Wittenberg to study education.
You have more passion for
But-
Springfield than some people that have been
I
here
mean,
their whole life, okay?
but it truly, like this, this has become my home. I mean, I've lived here since 2008. I came to Wittenberg thinking that I was going to get an education degree and be a public school teacher. And then Dr. Welker and Dr. Estrup and many others built this vision for a promised neighborhood. And it changed my trajectory of thinking about, how I wanted to work with public school, maybe not in a teacher setting, but something similar. So, Springfield is my home. I live on Perrin Avenue, so I'm a Southsider as well. So, this is serious and personal and important to not only me, but the team that I work with. I'm sorry I don't have any of them with me here tonight. We had a couple other meetings and, family obligations with kids, but I hope you get to meet some of the people on our team too, and I think some of you already have. So it's myself and 3 full-time staff members and then 2 part-time staff members as well. So we're trying to build that team. If anybody's interested, we're always looking for people to participate. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before we conclude?
I love
Crystal?
that everybody looked down here first. Absolutely, Kaylee, you already know what it is. As a Lincoln teacher and someone that does serve Springfield City Schools and the students on the South Side every single day that's born and raised here, hats off, and thank you so much for everything that you've put into Promise, and even being able to serve with you with Promise for a couple of years. So Dr. E always says the Promise Board first and then City Commission next. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can testify that you have a great staff, Dawn, Kristen, Mike, and I love all the collaborations, how you really pull other organizations together to kind of wrap around what the subject is, bringing Habitat in for Lego night. That's an excellent idea. And you're just really expanding the brand, right? You guys continue to add more opportunities for our community to get involved in, as we know, and we've discussed how we need to get involved with youth in the community. This is a great organization to start with, for sure. Thank you.
I just want to say I think that your work is so necessary and so valuable. So thank you for everything you do. 3 just quick things that stood out to me. I love how you're hitting on so many different areas, especially working with families, working with like literacy, reading, and then also the garden. I love it, especially like teaching them about healthy foods. So I am super grateful for you and really proud to support you.
Gotta come out to the garden. It's absolutely beautiful. And
I gotta get
they
my
do.
own garden in order first.
Listen,
I probably
you won't
could go
need
out
your
there.
own garden
I need help.
after you go to the Promise Garden. I promise you.
That was my introduction into what
do
you
want
do. I thought you just gardened.
Kaylee, I would just like to echo what my colleagues on the commission have said. Thank you for your passionate, powerful leadership of this initiative. This started some years ago and started at Lincoln, as you pointed out, small scale. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Bob Welker from Wittenberg University, because he is the person who approached us and said, I think we need to do this. And we did. What perhaps many people don't know is we wrote a federal grant to fund this, and we did not get it. But the community collectively thought this was so important that they said, we will fund this locally. And they did. And they continued to fund it locally until we had some additional success with other grant opportunities. So I also want to give a shout out to the community at large. The community at large stepped forward and said, we need to do this for our children and their families. And it's paid off. Keep up the great work. And I look forward to some of those delicious vegetables you guys raise. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn the hearing? Or
So moved. Second.
session? Call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes. Go ahead and move up. Formal meeting. So before we begin our formal meeting, we have a proclamation Commissioner Brown is going to go ahead and share with us.
City of Springfield, Ohio proclamation. Whereas the Links Incorporated nationwide Black Family Wellness Expos are being held across the country on March 16th, 2024, which aims to leverage its entire membership in the effort to improve outcomes for Black families. And whereas the Springfield chapter of the Links Incorporated will also hold a Black Family Wellness Expo on March 16th, 2024, an effort to reduce health and economic disparities and to save and improve lives in the Black community. This effort in Springfield and Clark County is aimed at addressing multiple health, educational, and economic disparities that negatively impacts the health and quality of life in many in this community. And whereas the local event is in conjunction with national efforts to raise awareness about conditions that shorten or impact the quality of life for those in the Black community. And whereas the local event raises awareness for kidney disease, heart health, breast and prostate cancer awareness, dental health, mental health awareness, and resources, suicide signs and prevention, dementia, caregiver resources, voter registration, financial health, local media, medical resources, local pharmacy resources, and much more. Therefore, Rob Rue, Mayor of the City of Springfield, Ohio, and President of the City Commission, does hereby proclaim that March 16th of 2024 as Black Family Wellness Day in Springfield. And we urge our citizens to promote and attend the 2024 Black Family Wellness Expo to bring awareness to the overall health of the local community. In witness whereof, signed, Mayor Rob Rue. Thank you. And I'm really excited about reading this proclamation because when we came out of executive, I was so excited to see all of my very dear Link sisters. And I wish I would have worn my green this evening, but I'm very proud to be a part of that organization and very excited to see y'all here tonight. Just made my whole evening.
Miss Donna, do you want to say a few words? Would anybody like to say a few words before we
Sister
go
Donna?
for a picture?
Donna Wooten is our president of our chapter. Madam
Only-
President.
Thank you. The only thing that I want to say on behalf of the Links of Springfield, Ohio, is thank you very much for recognizing us. And we do a lot in this community. This isn't the only thing, but this
Sure
is
is
the
not.
thing for now. So thank you very much.
Thank
Would you all
you.
like to gather over here for a picture?
Come on, my dear Link sisters, come on.
I believe I've seen the ladies at International Women's Day. Yes, they were.
Showing up everybody on the dance floor.
I'm on a list, I hear. Oh, you on a list? She said you're on my list. Okay, get hold of me.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the formal meeting of the City Commission to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Here.
Dr. Estrop?
Here.
Mrs. Houston?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Mr. Rue?
Here. Please rise for the invocation and the pledge. Father, just thank you for the opportunity that we get to lead tonight and make decisions with integrity and transparency. Also ask that you continue to bless the leaders in our community that are advocating for our children and just seeking the betterment of Springfield. In your name. Is there a motion to approve minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments or questions from the commission? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. Clerk will proceed with first reading by title only.
Amending ordinance number 9190 passed March 12, 1991, and commonly known as the codified ordinances of the City of Springfield, Ohio, by repealing and replacing Section 1380.04 entitled Owner Required to Act Enforcement Authority relative to the Vacant Property Registration Program. Amending ordinance number 9190 passed March 12, 1991, and commonly known as the codified ordinances of the City of Springfield, Ohio, by repealing and replacing certain sections of Chapter 1390 entitled Administration of Rental Property Registration Program, consenting to the resurfacing of State Route 334 from mile marker 0 to 4.24 within the City of Springfield, Ohio, by the Ohio Department of Transportation, identified as CLA, well, we'll skip that, and further identified as PID number 109775, providing for the maintenance of the right-of-way, and authorizing the city manager to enter into agreements with the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio necessary to complete the project.
Ask Brian Heck, City Manager, is there anything you need to explain or would like to explain with first readings?
Yeah, I'll just touch base real quick. 3 items. So the first 2 are somewhat interrelated. The first one dealing with the vacant property registration program. That just updates it to add the requirement to provide trash hauling information as it relates to the subject property that is registered. The second one is relative to the rental property registry. This has some minor changes, specifically removing the requirement of the self-inspection checklist for the interior of the structure that was required by the applicant, and then just provide some additional exemptions that needed to be added into what was defined as a rental property, and then also better defining the appeals process that exists within that. And then the final item related to 334, that is a State of Ohio ODOT project, but work occurs inside the city. So we have to basically consent to that. That is from State Route 4 to US 68 is the project on 334, with some of those limits being within the city of Springfield.
Is there any other comments from commissioners? From the audience on first readings only? From the audience on first readings only, please go to the microphone if you're going to speak. State your name and address for the record when you get there, please.
Gary Armstrong, 109 East Ward Street.
Thank you.
I can hear, I'm fairly articulate.
Mhm.
But Brian, when you read that, it was so vague, it doesn't tell me a damn thing about what you were talking about. If you want to tell me you want to set aside property for this or that, space for this or that, that's kind of clear. But what you just said, I don't know if anybody else didn't get it. I didn't get it.
Okay. Well, Gary, these are also posted on our website as well, so you can read them. We don't vote on these tonight. These will be voted in 2 weeks, and I
But
encourage...
my question is
I
tonight.
encourage you to not argue with me first. Secondly, I encourage you to look at the information that we're trying to provide openly so you can have a good argument when you're addressing us.
I read that, and then I listened to Brian.
These are the titles only of the ordinance. These are pages long.
You know what? I believe in open conversation when
I
I
do
deal
too.
with people. I very well explain things to my clients, and I expect the same from my representatives.
Great. Your comments are noted. We're going to move on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll go ahead and move on to second readings.
Approving an amendment to the existing CC2A District Development Plan for 2.148 acres at 2302 St. Paris Connector to modify the planned building layout and parking configuration.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
As I recall, this is changing the configuration of the development within the boundaries of the property. This does not affect any street accesses to and from the property. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to execute a perpetual water and sewer line easement by and between the city and Villa Run Condominium Unit Owners Association to assume ownership and maintenance responsibilities for various utilities as detailed in the easement.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
Thank you. This is a very important piece of legislation because it sets a precedent for other similar developments in condominium units. And I was wondering, Mr. Heck, if you could explain why this is so important and how we will use it as a city in the future.
Yes, Commission. So This relates to a condominium owners association that exists up on the north side of town, right at the corner of Durr and Villa approximately. And so what this does is we looked at the utility and the condition of the utilities and worked with the owners association to look at any improvements that were necessary to be made at their cost before we would assume maintenance responsibility of those utilities. This is for the water and sewer mains and manholes, does not include stormwater. It does not include the laterals for the sewers or the water service lines. It's the main components that are feeding over 200 properties here. And this is important long-term to keep those utilities viable for those dwelling units and not have 200 plus units that would all of a sudden not have access to water and sewer utilities.
Unlike a number of sewer and water lines in the city where it is city-owned, these were built by the private owners and up to this point have been maintained by the private owners. And so what we're doing is assuming responsibility because ultimately at the end of the day, the choice is if the association can no longer afford to maintain these, we have 200 plus units without sewer and water.
That is correct. And we've actually addressed, later in the 90s, legislation was adopted that would change how that was set up for condo associations. So any new associations that were formed or condo units that were built would not fall with how this was developed and other condominium associations were developed before that legislation.
What year do you recall what year this was built?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. But we now have legislation in place that prohibit this from happening.
Yes, it protects that from happening. My understanding, looking out early 90s, is that accurate? Yeah, we have a resident that's here, so.
Thank you.
Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing an additional expenditure relating to the contract with Highbridge Consulting LLC for professional consulting services for an amount not to exceed $6,000 or a total amount not to exceed $126,000.
So moved.
Seconded. Other comments from commissioners?
I was wondering if the staff might just tell us what the increase is needed for.
Yeah, this is just accompanying for the normal contract costs. The price hasn't changed, but as we increase the amounts over time because we've exceeded that 75,000, we have to bring it back for your approval. So our agreement has stayed the same from the beginning in terms of the monthly amount.
Thank you very much.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to accept a 2024 Energized Community Grant through the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEC, in an amount up to $59,563 to be used for implementation of energy savings or energy infrastructure measures. Authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement for the acceptance of said grant, and authorizing the city manager, law director, and the director of finance to do all things necessary for the acceptance of the grant and comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing and directing the city manager to select certain identified parcels of real estate that constitute non-productive land and to notify the prosecuting attorney or the county auditor of Clark County, Ohio, as the case may be, pursuant to sections 5722.03 and 5722.04 of the Ohio Revised Code, that the city wishes to acquire said parcels pursuant to the provisions of Ohio Revised Code Chapter 5722 and Ordinance Number 98293 passed August 25th, 1998, and to do all things necessary to acquire said parcels.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Brian, could you go ahead and explain a little bit about this and clarify it for?
Yeah, Commission, so this is specifically related to our Mow to Own program, because, so as you know, in 2016, we started a Mow to Own program to address some of the abandoned lots. So these are vacant lots that, you know, we've had to maintain and own. A lot of them forfeited to the state, and the state of Ohio has said, if you want them maintained, then you maintain them. And so this process has allowed us through sweat equity to allow property owners adjacent or within 1,000 feet, I believe, to take ownership of this through, again, sweat equity. So mowing the properties for a season, and then for a very low cost of basically the transfer fee, can assume title to the property. And so this has been a great program. This is 13 additional that we're taking that are represented in this ordinance tonight. And we've had great success since 2016 in transitioning these lots into ownership and back into some productive use.
And these are, they have to apply to actually do.
Yes, there is a program that they can apply through the Community Development Department for the Mow to Own application.
What else?
I just want to say it's a great program, and I commend the Community Development Department for continuing to use it to take non-productive vacant land that's been abandoned in our city and put it back on the tax rolls and put it to good use. So keep up the good work.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with Highway LLC for an amount not to exceed $76,720.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners?
I just was wondering, not only on this item, but the next three items, if you or Mr. Moore would comment on what this is being purchased for, what specifically will we do with the materials we're purchasing here. I think, as I recall, this is not our neighborhood paving program. Even though we put over $2 million a year in our neighborhood paving program, this is different. So I thought some comments were justified.
Yeah, I'll ask Chris if he wants to speak a little bit more to this item and the next three that are related.
Yes, Commissioner, this and the next items are the asphalt, hot and cold, that we purchased to do routine maintenance on the roadways. You will notice the next two contracts are in the $400,000 range. We don't buy all of that. We have to make sure we have agreements in place with two asphalt plants for days that one is broken, or depending on which side of town we're working on, or depending on which type of asphalt they're making. This is for our normal everyday maintenance.
Potholes, ditches that are dug and disrupt the flow of the street, and small paving projects.
Yes, all three of those.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other comments from commissioners from the audience? You want to go to the microphone?
Item. Gary Armstrong, 109 East Ward. That was three items for street material. And I couldn't hear him because you guys won't turn the microphones up as I've requested about 10 times. So I don't know exactly what he said.
So there.
But if you're buying street materials, why don't you buy them from one person and get it the best price possible?
So when we purchase anything, we have to get the lowest possible bid or the best bid
Absolutely.
every time. That's what we already do. So by the time it gets to this sheet here, that's what's been done. What you're seeing is the best possible price that we could have gotten. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. This is right. Best possible price we got to get to this point. Okay,
Are you saying
so every time
those were three items. Are you saying they all occurred at
we have
different times?
they're occurring today because one of them is a backup contract in case they can't produce the asphalt cold and hot that we need. And the other one, yeah, so there's two similar, but they're backup contracts as well. So all this is so we can have smoother streets in town. I saw somebody post online, when are they going to pave the roads? We're going to fix potholes first, and then we're going after neighborhood roads as well this year. But this is how the city does business openly and gets the best price for the taxpayers.
Well, that's one thing everybody I know wants the same.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes?
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with Shelley Materials Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $444,975.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes?
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with A&B Asphalt Corporation for an amount not to exceed $453,490.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes?
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with Valley Asphalt Corporation for an amount not to exceed $707,380.
So moved. Second. So moved.
Second.
Make it happen.
It's been moved and seconded, moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes?
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of one Bomford Flailbot remote control slope mower and all necessary accessories from RL Parsons Equipment for an amount not to exceed $124,951 through Sourcewell pursuant to the Sourcewell Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there any comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes?
Mr. Rue?
This would have been a good question. This is a robotic mower we just voted on, and it's going to actually help save lives, keep people safer, and this will mow the slopes that you see in Clark County, where if you've seen an individual on a mower trying to balance down the hill, you won't see it anymore. We have this robotic mower that will be much safer for our staff members. We can go on.
Authorizing the withdrawal of the City of Springfield, Ohio from the National Trail Parks and Recreation District effective April 30, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. I just think this is a fantastic move. And again, I want to thank Leanne and her team here and everybody that's been a part of this. I know there's comments from commissioners.
I just would like to hear again from Leanne. I think it doesn't hurt for you to repeat how this is going to work to the benefit of not only the city of Springfield, but Clark County in general.
Over the last 20 years, we've had a variation of two different agencies that are countywide agencies with National Trail Parks and Recreation District and the Clark County Park District. So we've had groups working for the last 12 years to combine the two agencies to create efficiencies, have a better consistent work and labor force, and also to make sure that we have no duplication of services. So these will join the two park districts into one, and we will have a board of park commissioners that is appointed by the probate judge, and the city of Springfield will serve as our fiduciary agent. So we will have consistent management of those funds through the city of Springfield with our own bank account, so it'll be very transparent. So we want to make sure that the residents understand this isn't the city taking over the parks or taking anything away from the county. We will still serve all 130 residents of Clark County with a plethora of activities and special events and programs that benefit all of the residents.
Because you're combining, is there going to be a name change or?
At some
What do you
point,
think?
yes.
All right.
We don't know how that's going to go yet.
I think it's important to note that even though there is a combination into one authority, all the property that makes up park owned by the city of Springfield will be retained by the city of Springfield. We're not giving away our park. Those remain as property of the city of Springfield now and as new parks get developed in other parts of.
Yes, that is correct, Commission. And what you'll see in future legislation after, if this passes tonight, is a contract in place that would have Clark County Park District doing business as to operate and maintain our parks. So we will maintain ownership of them, but we will have a contract in place where Clark County Park District will operate and maintain those.
We currently have 24 properties that we maintain on behalf of the city of Springfield, so that will continue. But with this merger, we will have 30 parks and 2,035 acres across Clark County that our residents can benefit from.
I think this is very important because recreational opportunities are so important for people in a community. And we have some quality recreational opportunities here, and we've been adding to them. So I applaud this move, and I think it will take us in a very positive direction.
Just very quickly, this week, today we met with the playground company for the playground at Davie Moore. They will be starting by the end of next week. We have a pre-meeting tomorrow with the skateboard company that will be installing the skateboard park at Davie Moore. And the Sherman Avenue pump track has been formed, and they will probably be doing the asphalt the third week of April. So lots of fun things happening thanks to the Community Development Department on those ends.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Okay, we'll do it the old way. Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement to purchase of certain real property located at 1318 Kenton Street and 0 Kenton Street rear from the Board of Clark County Commissioners of Clark County, Ohio, through the Clark County Land Reutilization Corporation for $1, authorizing the city manager, law director, and director of finance to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said purchase agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
Just wondering if you might explain, purchasing two pieces of property for $1 is rather unusual. So, I think we need a little more information, or the public does.
Yes, Commission, I'll have Bobby Bruno explain that.
Hi, Commissioners. So this property is surrounded by about 20 acres owned by the city for the purpose of brownfield assessments. So testing the ground to make sure there are no environmental contaminants, or if there are, we understand those. So this was kind of a half-acre hole in that parcel. And this will give us contiguity to conduct that testing with our consultant.
I would just like to add, over the past years, the state of Ohio, the General Assembly and the governor took brownfield funding out of the state budget. And that hurt cities like Springfield and other cities who are old manufacturing community. I'm glad to see that we were able to get brownfield money back in the state budget. And of course, one of the examples of the importance of this is the old I-8 plant on Lagonda that's now the new facility for Topre. So clearly this work And I want to commend our legislators for having the vision to see this continue to work in communities like Springfield.
Comments from the audience? You want to go to the mic when you speak, please?
It's $400,000. I know what brownfields are, but it didn't make a dent on what you really are going to do. Can you say it in plain language, what you're going to do?
You're actually speaking to the next item. We're still on the purchase or transfer of the property between the land bank and the city of Springfield, although related to the next item as well. And so, again, we will be conducting environmental assessments, phase 1 and phase 2 on the property that we're currently on for legislation, but other properties, brownfield properties, to assess the environmental contamination that may exist of those properties. Then the idea is with the state funding that Commissioner Estrop mentioned, we would be able to apply for additional funding to clean up any environmental contamination or concerns of those properties within our community. The idea of this specific property that we're taking hold from the land bank for those assessments is that the land bank would then eventually take back ownership of that property and the surrounding properties for a redevelopment project that the county is working on currently.
Well, my thought is, in a city that's dirt poor, do we have to pay $400,000 a day? Can we put it off?
This is a grant from the state of Ohio. This is not local city dollars paying for this.
Well, it's still taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, but we're leveraging your taxpayer dollars back to our community. They're going to go somewhere in the state of Ohio. This is a program the state has created. So they're going to some community. Why not leverage our tax dollars back to Springfield?
I don't have any reason.
I don't want to see somebody else get our money. I want the money to stay in Springfield where we can use it.
I just want to see it used productive,
We do too.
expedient.
Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a brownfield remediation program subrecipient agreement with Clark County Land Reutilization Corporation to accept funding to conduct environmental assessments at various properties within the city in an amount not to exceed $398,874 and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Comments from commission? It's been explained from the audience. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a sub-grant award agreement to accept $80,987.94 through the State of Ohio Body-Worn Camera Grant Program from the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Services, authorizing the city manager, director of finance, and law director to perform all acts and execute all documents considered necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said sub-grant award agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. I think if we could ask the chief to speak to this a little bit, and then I know there's comments from commission as well.
Good evening, Mayor Rue. Thank you, and good evening, Commissioners. So this is an opportunity, as you know, we were awarded last year, now it would have been 22, that we were awarded a grant to purchase body-worn cameras. We are now through the training phase, and we're working through the end of the training phase and part of the implementation phase. But as you know, with that comes a lot of data and managing that data and records requests and things like that. So this grant opportunity came up very quickly at the very end of last year, and we've submitted for it, and we've been awarded this opportunity to provide some funding for a video redaction specialist. So that would allow us to have a civilian position where we could have someone assisting us managing all of this footage that we do gather from the body-worn cameras.
Well, the sooner we can have this on our officers, I think it serves better as accountability and transparency
Agreed.
for our community.
Yes.
Is there any other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
Yes, I just want to say, I think this is a great idea. It protects our officers. It also protects our citizens.
Absolutely.
And it's coming to us as grant money. Once again, it's great that we can bring home some state money to the city of Springfield. So keep up the good work, and the sooner this can be put into practice, the better.
Thank you. Been extremely grateful that the state has considered us in these last couple of rounds.
Super excited to hear that, because I remember when I first came on board as a commissioner and talking with Chief Graff about the cameras and how we could possibly get some more transparency and accountability and all those pieces. And to see it now coming into fruition is really amazing. So good work, guys. Thank you.
So Chief, we're the 12th largest city in the state of Ohio. Do all other cities have body cams, or just the smaller communities don't have?
And not everyone, but I do think, now they have become more readily available. I will say that state grant funding that we received from Governor DeWine in the Office of Criminal Justice Services, they saw a large number of departments put in the first round. So if you remember back when we submitted back in 2021, there was a very large number of departments that put in, and we actually didn't get an opportunity at that time. But we were encouraged, to stay positive, and this grant funding came around again because they had so many departments who were interested in purchasing body cameras, which I think is, it says a lot about police departments here in the state of Ohio and the importance that the governor sees in them as well, and the support for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments from commissioners from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Room?
Yes.
Confirming and approving applying for and accepting funding from the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for an elderly and disabled transit fare assistance program grant for operating assistance in the amount of $11,773, and a fiscal year 2024 urban transit program grant for operating assistance and preventive maintenance in the amount of $503,547. Confirming and approving the amendment of fiscal year 2024 Ohio Transit Partnership Program, OTP2, grant allocation in the amount of $122,415 from operating assistance to preventive maintenance, and authorizing the city manager, finance director, and law director to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said grant applications and corresponding agreement, and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements, and to provide assurances and additional information as required by the Ohio Department of Transportation, and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
Thank you. Commissioner Houston and I attended the Transportation Coordinating Committee meeting the other day, where they took action to approve setting the stage for this action that we'll be taking tonight. Now, I think what becomes so critical is that we're on the cusp of changing the way our public transit system operates, and it will, I think, make a huge difference. I was wondering, Brian, if we might have some comments in terms of where we are in the transition from the fixed route to almost Uber-like system.
Yes, Commission, I'll ask Jason By to provide an update of where we're at.
Good evening, Commissioners, and Dr. Estrop, thank you for your question. So we are currently in the process of drafting an RFP, request for proposals, for that service transition. That document should be ready and through our purchasing department by the end of the month. The process I expect to take itself 60 to 90 days to receive return bids from vendors who are interested in providing that service. And then there will be an evaluation process that we'll get through similarly as you spoke of before, lowest and best. But we are looking for the best possible service to provide to this.
I was wondering, Jason, if you might describe today's system and what the new one's going to look like? Because they're very, very different.
The existing system is 7 bus routes running continuously in a loop for 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, 6:40 a.m. to 6:40 p.m. We're going to transition to a microtransit model, which will be an on-demand service that you'll be able to schedule either ahead of time, by phone, on a website. The goal is hopefully through an app-based system that will be far more efficient and will deliver a more customer-friendly service and get customers from their pickup to destination more efficiently.
Will we be using the big buses to do that with, or not?
No, we're looking to transition to smaller vehicles. Again, that may also have to go through a bidding process till we can determine exactly what those will be. But that is also ongoing at the same time.
I think this is exciting, and as I get feedback from the community on this, one of the groups that's very excited about this are businesses who have in some cases, difficulty getting their own workers to and from work. And this system, it would seem to me, would provide some opportunities for that.
It would. It is our intention to partner to support the workforce and the employers in this city that are trying to, get people to work more efficiently and on time.
I think the app is a great idea, but what about for folks that don't have cell phones? They'll have access to be able to get a ride.
Absolutely. I think the most important part of the service is that we're not going to leave anybody behind. The intention is to continue to support the existing customers, whether they're unbanked or prefer not to use credit cards. Some people just prefer cash. So we're going to continue to support the existing rider base, but also hopefully attract a bunch new.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of sand and gravel with Enon Sand and Gravel LLC for an amount not to exceed $11,163.75 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners?
Again, there are 3 contracts, all for sand and gravel. Was wondering if Mr. Moore might explain, or you might explain.
Yeah, I can speak to
why
it,
we
Commissioner.
have 3 different contracts.
Yeah, so again, this is related to sand and gravel materials, specifically related to our utilities. So bedding, backfill material, subgrade. This is another great example. We had 16 different items that we bid, and so this represents the lowest and best for each of those 16 different items. So that's why we have 3 different contracts, because we wanted to make sure we got lowest and best price for all 16 items.
So instead of one company getting all 16 and we not being able to take advantage of the lowest and best price, by splitting it up 3 ways, we got the lowest price on every one of the 16.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Comments from the audience? Go to the mic.
I've built streets. I've used a lot of gravel in building. Why do you use the word emergency? Emergency. The gravel hasn't run out. I don't get that.
The emergency is an emergency ordinance that allows us to immediately move into the contract itself. We need materials to be able to fill our holes. This is our 24 program. We have work that's already beginning. We need access to these materials.
I get
It's
that.
related to the contract award, not that gravel's not readily available, but we can't purchase it until these are in place.
I get that, but it's usually only pennies difference on the ton from one outfit to the other.
When they enter into contracts, they have a timeline. And so when we vote for this tonight, it passes by 4 votes, supermajority, then they can go ahead and do it tonight if they had to, or pay for it tomorrow. It's a right-of-way need. So that's why it's an emergency. It's not a 911 emergency.
Sometimes my questions aren't question your authority. I always want to learn. I might be an old man, but I want to learn till I die.
Okay. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of sand and gravel with Shelley Materials Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $59,740 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. There are comments from commissioners from the audience. Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of sand and gravel with Mechanicsburg Sand and Gravel Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $180,120 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Our comments from commissioners.
If there was a theme tonight, it would be gravel.
That's right. From the audience. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 2 to the contract with RB Jurgens Contractors Incorporated for the US 40 Ditch Improvement Project to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $8,541.09 for a total amount not to exceed $577,134.71, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 2 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. So when you look at this contract, we're not voting on 577,000. We're only voting on 8,500. This has been an ongoing contract, so it's a change order. It's a small change order so that's, what would you like to add?
I just want to ask if perhaps you can explain what the whole project is and what we're doing that's going to make a difference in our community.
Yeah, I'll ask Chris to talk specifically about the project.
Commissioners, this project is actually very substantially complete. It took the old concrete flow channel out on US 40 in front of the cinema in Springview that was failing and filled it in with pipe. And we were able to put dirt over that pipe that we can grade and mow. It makes it much easier to maintain. It's much safer for the motoring public. And the flow channel had failed to the point that we could not make repairs on it any longer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Proceed with emergency resolutions?
Need to vote
Oh, we
on
need to
this.
vote. Go ahead and call.
Mrs.
Any
Houston?
comments from the audience? Let's roll that one first. Okay. Go ahead and call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Finding the necessity and declaring the intent to appropriate interest in real property in connection with providing right-of-way and easements needed for the purpose of making and repairing roads which shall remain open to the public without charge, to wit, the safety improvements including pavement resurfacing, curb, handicap ramp, and walk replacement, addition of pedestrian refuge islands, elimination of driveways, installation of a tree lawn, traffic signal replacement, drainage improvements, and water service replacements on State Route 72, South Limestone Street, between Leffel Lane and Singer Street, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners?
Can you describe what this is?
Yeah, Commission. So this is the project along State Route 72 or South Limestone Street. It mentioned the limits of Leffel Lane to Singer Street. And so this is a project to improve not only vehicular safety, but also for pedestrians. As you know, if you walk out on South Limestone Street, you feel like you're walking in the travel lane. So this bumps that back, creates a buffer between the pedestrian sidewalk and the travel lanes, makes a aesthetic improvements, lighting enhancements, and those types of things. This item here, so we're in the right-of-way acquisition phase, both temporary, so some are needed for temporary takes for the construction, and then some are permanent as we're expanding out. And so this represents that process of us working with the property owners to acquire both those temporary and permanent takes so that we can advance forward with this project.
Really excited about this. I can't wait to see it done.
Yeah, me too.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Motion to publish tentative assessments to property owners for the 2023 sidewalk curb and gutter program.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
The next statements showed two items that had been removed from the original agenda. There was a change to one, but we also have the addition of two items consenting to the appointment of Michael Morris and Aiden Raymond to the Board of Zoning Appeals and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? Appreciate folks willing to serve.
Absolutely.
From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Consenting to the appointment of Casey Jones and, or is it Cassie?
Casey.
Casey, I want to make sure I get it correct.
Yes.
Casey Jones and Andrea Whitaker to the City Planning Board and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners?
I am very excited to see those individuals step up. And again, just wanted to echo your words and to be able to work and serve the community. I'm very excited.
Yes. From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. Committee reports. There's anything? Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, Commission. So two items that I want to talk to tonight during this part of the agenda. One is related to, so we received complaints at a commission meeting regarding 110 East Ward Street. Just to give an update, so the property is zoned RS8, which is medium density single family residence district. This zoning district permits duplexes as a provisional use under the code. Clark County Auditor records indicate the house was built in 1909. An exterior inspection was completed by our code compliance officers, and inspection notes show the front door. One front door is labeled as A, an east side door is labeled as B, and an additional east side door has what appears to be a keyless locking device installed on the door. Other than the doors, there is no evidence to prove or disprove this is a multi-unit or additional units were added without the proper permits and inspections. The same complaint was forwarded to building inspections to look. There were photos taken that indicate the doors labeled A and B. Again, a duplex is permitted in this zoning classification as a provisional use. And again, there were no indications that this was utilized as more than the two units labeled A and B. Second, I wanted to bring up to commission report of concern. So many of our citizens utilized the report of concern feature that was available on our website. Due to software changes, that is temporarily disabled. So if you go out to our website, you will not see the report of concern feature. That doesn't mean we still don't want you to report a concern, so you can still, if it's related to a code compliance issue on a private property or so forth, so junk and trash, weeds, high grass, you can contact our code compliance office at 937-324-6666. 7385. If it's more of a service department related, so a common one is potholes, so things in the street or issues, dead animals in the street. That's another one that we receive. You can contact our service department at 937-525-5800 to file that complaint. So I just want to make sure we're working. It's going to be some time before we have that feature available again on our website. We still want to receive those complaints, and that's the best two methods. If it's a general item that you're not sure which department to reach out to, code or service, please feel free to reach out to my office, the city manager's office at 937-324-7300, and we'll help direct that call.
There's also emails available on the website. You can email any of the commissioners and, or the city manager. Get a response. Is there other committee reports?
Yeah, I want to share today that this afternoon that Commissioner Estrop was elected chair to our JED board that Bridget and I are also a part of, and we were out at the airport today, and it was a great experience seeing what's all happening out at the airport. I'm excited to be a part of it and work with the Green Township trustees. They were great to meet with today, so just wanted to give that a little plug. You want to talk about the airport?
I'll just add on that I think a lot of people don't realize everything going on out at the airport and the significant strides that the city has made in the past, few years. Credit to you, Tom. So if you ever have time to take a drive out there, it's pretty incredible.
The JED board is the Joint Economic Development District with Green Township, the city of Springfield, to help governor land around the airport. Right, Tom? No other committee reports?
I was able to attend the Job and Family Services Board this morning, and it was just an amazing experience. So please be on the lookout for job fairs on the rise. So there are some things that are coming updated. And sorry, I don't have them with me, of course. They are in my backpack in my car. But they are definitely going to be on social media and spread that word. It will be held at the Hollenbeck. And so there are April dates, and there are also some dates coming up in May as well. So really excited to see that coming to our city. And if anybody needs a job, it's definitely there for you.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in regards to 2 weeks ago tonight, we were leaving commission, and then we all know the tornado that happened. So I just like to send out the condolences to everyone that, had damage to their house or lost their home.
Sure.
And then commend our first responders that were out there almost immediately to help. And then, sorry, I have a lot of comments.
No, you're fine.
And then number 2, don't forget to vote on Tuesday, Election Day. Yep. And then number 3, if you see the water meter sign to change out your water meter in your neighborhood, I just want to let you know that it is incredibly easy to do. I think his name was Jeremy from the service department, come to my house yesterday. I was worried because I have an old house. Seamless, great service, and it's really easy to do. All
Am I done Monday?
right, I'm done.
No, that's great. Go ahead.
I just want to, again, circle back to a couple meetings ago where the chief spoke to us about youth violence and just encouraging the community to be involved with our youth. And I've continued that, thinking that through and trying to put together some youth organizations to share with the community on how they can be a part of making some different connections and being involved with the youth. Not only Springfield Promise Neighborhood tonight, but there's a couple other things I want to put out there. The Sheriff's Department has posted on their Facebook page this week. They're doing a youth program. They're bringing it back. It's on their Facebook page. And then for us in Springfield, I want to give a shout out to the Citizens Police Academy. They are currently enrolling, and I think that information is on our Facebook page now.
Yes, on our Facebook page and our website.
Yeah, so I actually attended the Springfield Citizens Police Academy during COVID. So I actually got to go one full session, one time, and a half. because of the toilet paper crisis. But it was a great experience, and it just gives you such a different perspective. I definitely moved differently in support of our police department and how, you know, it could benefit the community by connecting with them. So thank you, Allison, for that.
Other comment? We'll go ahead and have comments from the audience. I've got cards to announce, and we'll go ahead and begin with Diane Daniels. If you want to go to the microphone, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Give me a minute. That time represents the silence of the citizens of Springfield who feel disenfranchised, frustrated, and betrayed. You will not hear their voices here because they know you will not, or they think that you will not listen. 3 minutes is not enough. They know what happened. I know what happened. And all they hear, suck it up. It's your new normal. Get used to it. It's not going to change. It breaks my heart to hear the stories. Got a handful of them here. I have an entire folder of stories of our citizens who are afraid to bring them to you, but they'll bring them to me. I also have stories of our foreign nationals that are here that I have spoken with that'll break your heart. I listened to your podcast, Brian and Meru, that you had about the state of Springfield, state of the city. You haven't yet met with any of us or those that would like to speak to you at length about their circumstances over the last 2 years. I think it's important that you connect with the people who have dirt under their fingernails, who have smudges of oil on their face, who come home dirty, tired, and sweaty every night, and then have to face this. The people who can leave have. The people who can't, they're giving up. So I think that when you come to the state of the city, you should give those people a chance to speak. And 3 minutes is just not enough. If you could put together a panel, I would happily connect you with folks who are willing to speak with decorum, but with passion, and will offer you solutions and not just gripe. Thank you.
Sanders?
For me. Mark Sanders, live out on Snyder Domer Road. Kind of segue into what Diane said. We recently, it's been a while since I've been here, so congratulations to all the new members and mayor on your election. We recently had one of our rentals opened up back at the end of last year, early this year, and I had 30 applicants 24 hours out in the county, away from the city. Over half of those applicants were due to the fact that they had either their home was being sold, they were in an area that they no longer felt safe. So this is kind of an ongoing thing. So I have a question for Mr. Heck. I didn't hear anything about the Immigrant Task Force. Is that still a committee?
Yeah.
Yes, that is still a committee. We're still actively working through different things. We're actually meeting with Congressman Turner's office and federal agencies here coming up in April is when they set that up. So yes, that is something still active.
What is the mission statement of the Immigrant Task Force? What is any group, organization has a mission statement. So what is your end goal?
it was not put together as an organization. It was put together as an investigative committee within the city to look into issues of housing, of employment. We want to make sure as an investigative. And is there, I think there was more at that, but it's why it's not a mission statement organization. It's a city-led investigative committee. We want to get some answers for the community, and that's what we're trying to do.
I think as part of that, it needs to be, and the verbiage needs to be something like also taking into consideration safety, security, and well-being of lifelong residents. Right now, the focus has been entirely on new arrivals. Some of the stories that I heard of the people that actually filled out applications, I felt, horrible for. If I'd had 30 houses, I could have rented all 30 of them right away. They don't feel safe. They're having, and it's a cultural clash. It's not, I don't think it's a purposeful thing between either group, but it's a cultural clash. Our traditions, laws, and culture is 180 degrees different of what they're used to. And one of the things that I heard that bothered me very much, I've actually had quite a few people contact me here lately, is some pretty horrid things occurring to domesticated animals in the neighborhood. We've had some stuff in the park that, again, they're being taken advantage of for reasons other than, and if you shake your head, Brian.
No. I asked me if there was proof. I just don't have proof of it. We've heard the same thing.
People that have confided in me have asked me for anonymity. I can't give their names up.
We haven't seen the proof that you're talking, and I've heard about it too.
Yeah. So again, I only see this getting worse. So I kind of agree with the previous speaker. I think we need to come together. Citizen input is going to be the only thing that's going to fix this. So I'm sure I'm probably running up on my 3 minutes, but
you are. But I want you to know that you are being heard. The community is being heard on this, and we are concerned on how it is affecting the community. We want to make sure there is safe for our residents and safe for those that are here as residents. We have to make sure that we focus on all of it because they are here, and we need to make sure that we're focusing on safe measures for the entire community.
I'll be here banging this drum every 2 weeks.
We want you to be.
Yeah. So
Come back.
anyway, thank you.
And then Mr. Armstrong.
I didn't hear what Brian was talking about 110, but 110's across the street from me, which brought me down here on December 6th, a year past the last December 6th. When an elected official turns a 4-unit into a single unit with no permit, I find it highly offensive. And nobody here asked me a question and stood on my side. I'm the offended, grievant citizen. If somebody did that to your property, built a 3-story garage and didn't pull a permit, would you raise hell? I can't even get somebody to go, Gary, let's talk about this. No, you just want to push me away. There's 4 mailboxes. I got the pictures of them. There was an extra door put on in 2020, which was a brand new door from Lowe's, which with the 1888 doors is pretty obvious when Brandon should have went out and went, well, that's a new door. Oh, in those houses, he just walled up the landing going upstairs, put that door in, separated the down, 2 up. Pretty simple. I've done a lot of carpentry. I know how it works. The mail woman delivers 4 different families. There's 8 cars. There is so much information to show it. And yet Larry Stevens is a very sweet man in the law department. Told me, well, we can't walk in there. Well, you have other alternatives based on the ordinances to shut them down, to open it up. And if you don't, you guys, because in the last year and a half, I found that LLCs letting houses die into the ground, 500 or 600 every 4 years, the city's paying to tear them away. Wow, that's as bad as a hotel every 5 years that we overspent on. I'm not the only one looking at these. I have a lot of friends listening. I got a letter from a guy. He said, I've been watching you on YouTube. He said he had 2 questions. The city of Springfield sent Brian Heck and others to Paris, France recently on the taxpayer dime. Imagine that. Question 1, how much did the overall trip to Paris cost, including airfare, hotel, meals, etc.? Question 2, How did the average taxpayer that funded this strip benefit from it? And I'm thinking, well, you know what? I think the same thing. I told you this in the last several weeks. Oh, and I find it kind of weird is that we've only scheduled 30 meetings and the charter says 48 a year. Tell me how that goes. You won't talk to me. You give me what I call you patronization, 3 minutes, then you don't talk to me, you don't ask me questions, you don't call me in to let me be in. That's not representation. I represented 1,200 people at International, and I could always tell you and him, whoever is raising hell, this is why I voted this way, because it made sense, and I could settle them down. If you guys are afraid of having people come in on the commission night and won't talk to them, there's something really dysfunctional about this.
Thanks for your comments. Okay.
I hope to hear
Is
from you soon.
Is there a
Maybe.
motion to adjourn?
Maybe.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?